into the way. I'll take a chance and let you in. Just take my hand and take me home tonight. We defeat all impossibilities. Yeah, you and me. We'll take our hearts and run free into the wild. Into the into the
Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the College Rainbow Six podcast, episode 2 with behind the scenes questions and answers. Today we're joined here with the wonderful Ureen and Jessica and Marvin to talk to us with their behind the scenes experience about casting, working with CRSL, working for other leagues, all that kind of stuff. How we're going to dive into this. Ureen, go ahead and take it away.
Alright, so to start off the podcast, real quick, I'd just like everybody's thoughts on their predictions for the summer season. Obviously, it's just started, so it's kind of hard to make a prediction yet, but obviously we know a couple teams. Personally, I think that the team with Surma, Soup, deploying, and a few of those guys is probably the one that's the front runner right now, just due to who's on the team and their past experiences and how they performed. I figured they'll probably be one of the best teams out there.
Agreed. I can definitely see it
Who's
happening. Also, I just want to take a quick second. I thought it was hilarious. I did that super hype intro, and then I passed it off to you, Ureen, and you're just like, yeah, let's talk about CRSL.
Oh, shoot.
Just like, okay.
Just laying back, chairs basically a recliner at that point.
You just see Ureen from the neck up. That's all you see.
Hi guys, my name is Ureen. Sponsored by Cooler Master.
Gotta chill now.
Yeah, there were some cool teams that also beyond CRSL that also made it into, or didn't make it into, but they competed in the Challenger League, right? You got to see some of them this last week, right?
There are a lot of teams that competed in Challenger League over the weekend. A couple that I remember are Oh shoot. Carnegie Mellon competed. They did fairly well. I think they made top 32 and lost to Bruh. Who
Yeah, they made
has
round of 32 and lost to Bruh.
second place CL team last season, so that's not something to feel bad about. And then you had University of Georgia, who also performed pretty well. I think they were top 64. I can't remember who they lost to.
They made it to round of 64. They lost to Ur. I don't even know anyone on that team. And I'm actually decent. I'm decently invested in the tier 2 scene, and I have no idea who any of those people are on that team.
Another team. There were just a bunch of collegiate players that were sorted across teams too. Like I know Mississippi State and UTSA had a combined team with Thunder.
I know Jagged from North Texas also had a team.
Yeah, he was playing on a team.
And then Baca, shout out to him making Canadian CL. So, shout out to Baca from ASU.
Yeah,
Done that on top of the teams who made, or the players who made PL. Zigalo and Not Loading, who've played in collegiate in the past.
Shout out to Not Loading.
Also, who was it this last weekend? I remember some of the admins were talking about this, Irene. There was one, he was a diamond tryhard that basically blamed one of our, collegiate players of hacking.
Oh, I don't remember who it was, but,
Was it Matter?
No. It was, Stu, maybe was his name? I can't remember.
I'm
but
trying
he
to find
blamed,
it in the chats. I can't find it what it was.
He called Soup out on an ELA macro for the Scorpion, saying that his recoil was just not possible.
And meanwhile, all of us are over here like, dude, that guy is literally coming second and first place for almost every single league that we've ever put on. And it's just he's not macroing. We've looked at his moss multiple times. Yeah.
It's called Soup is just stupidly talented. He's
just better.
Soup is literally one of the examples of where you can say he's just better because he is. I mean, there's no contest about it. Soup is just better.
It's absolutely insane. He will frag out, and I'm over here thinking Swindle was absolutely crazy. But the head admins played against who was it we played against last week, and we absolutely got demolished, Jareen.
The team name was potentially wasted.
Yeah. I
was busy to get to play.
It was wild. So they had admins put together a team to play in the summer league, and I don't know how I got dragged into this because I am absolutely shit tier. I was gold once, but that's only because Swindle carried his ass off to get me up to that point, and I was just basically a moving drone for him playing Monty, and of course Adanu was playing with us, and so the first thing they banned was Monty, and I'm like, okay guys, I am useless.
I no longer have a shield in front of me. I'm gonna go retire. I'm gonna go retire from this league right now.
It was Monty, Ash, Jaeger, and I'm just well, there goes all of Swindle's characters. We're gonna get destroyed too.
I watched a few rounds of the game, and there was just one highlight where it perfectly embodies every game that IMAT plays in collegiate scene, because it was Villa, and they're playing on the aviation defense, and IMAT just gets 4 frags in a matter of 5 seconds.
Yep.
And it just in a 1v1 all of a sudden with, I think it was CJ and IMAT 1v1. CJ managed to win it out, but IMAT just got 4 kills out of nowhere.
Hey, Elijah, the head observer for last season, basically fragged out. He got a 4K. A 4K in the middle of the round against all of them. And I'm just how did you just do that? How did you just pull that off? And then proceeded to get no frags for the rest of the game. That was it.
You have that one hot round and then you just shut down for the rest of the match. You're I don't need to pull any more weight. Y'all need to help me out here.
Cool.
I've been playing a lot of unranked with the Cooking Like a Stew guys from this season. So that's K9, as well as some of the other guys from NAU, Nuke and Boomer on that team. And they've been carrying me through unranked. And I was where is this when I need to do my placements? Get me in a plat. Get me somewhere, please.
Dude, I miss Boom. I miss seeing him frag out on the stream. Rest in peace.
All right. Well, to move on to the next topic, I guess. With obviously, we have guests here for the reason of asking them questions. So we want to talk to them about how they got into casting and got their foots in the door to do all this kind of cool stuff.
Yeah.
So, which you would like to go first?
I guess I'll take it out first. So I got started casting in. It was honestly completely random how I got started. So I started out in this freshman year, this last year. I was playing for UTK's B team. I mean, I'm a garbage tier gold player. Of course, I'm on the B team. And I started out playing for them, and I went to an esports meeting, and I was messing around with some OBS settings. looking just out. It was something completely random, because I streamed occasionally, but I was messing around, and our faculty advisor, he came up to me and was like, "Hey, he's like, you seem to know what you're doing with that. You want to be a part of our stream team and stream and potentially cast some of the games for the Siege team, because we don't really have anyone to do that now."
This is at Tennessee Knoxville, right?
Yes, UT Knoxville. So I said yes, and I started. And I remember the very first game I ever did. You will not find this VOD anywhere, and I have made sure of that because it was so garbage. It was UGA versus UTK Orange, which is our A team, and it was in some Corsair Sunday tournament. And I was casting the game. It was on Border, and my voice was gone. The night before, for whatever reason, my voice just decided to go out. So it is not only horrible casting, but my voice is dead at the same time. So I did that. I was like, wow, that was awful. There was no one watching at all, and the VOD was just kind of there. But from that, I was like, I kind of enjoy this. So I started doing it more regularly for some CR6 games when they would let me, and eventually. I think the first thing I sent in was an application to you guys. Actually, I sent in an application to you guys with some of my UTK broadcasts, and I mean, you guys gave me a chance to cast through that. Through that, I was able to get a spot. Probably the big turning point in my career was through some of the broadcasts I did for you guys. I was able to get a spot at Tennessee Tech University's LAN event that they were holding back in November, TechLAN, as one of their casters for Siege.
Nice.
And I mean, it was just kind of a side thing. I also came to compete with the team because at the time I was still competing, and went there, and it went really, really well. And I was looking through it, and I decided I'm going to throw a community caster application over to ESL, because why not? If I get in, great. I'll have the chance to cast some higher quality teams, maybe get my name out there a little bit more, and sort of whatever. And if not, it's whatever. I'll just keep casting collegiate just kind of as a side thing. And I sent them the VOD from Tennessee Tech, as well as I think one from this as well. And I ended up getting the position, and they brought me on as a community caster, and I got to cast the 6 invitational open and close quals. I won't talk about one particular match of that, because it is a match that caused a certain pro player from a certain team that has the 3 letters TS and M in their name to basically rail me for a thing that I had no control over. Anyways,
I remember.
But through that, I gained a lot more recognition and was able to start doing more higher profile things. I work now with an amateur league known as ESA. It's one of my main things.
Is that ESA with the green star, right?
No,
is that
it's
different?
not.
Okay.
It's completely different, and it's just specifically for Siege. It's
Interesting. So what does it stand for? I'm assuming Electronic Siege Association or something like that.
I cannot remember off the top of my head, because we've only just even internally we only refer to ourselves as ESA, and there's no there is an official name, but I can't remember it off the top of my head. But regardless, that's where I've spent most of my time and where I've done things most consistently. But I've done a couple things. The more recent Challenger League qualifiers. For the last Challenger League that ESL held, the season I did some of their qualifiers. And that's been the gist of it. I worked stints with a couple of amateur leagues that ended up falling apart. RSA, EPS, a couple of things here and there, but for the most part, ESA has been my main gig.
Nice.
I've got some things coming up that I cannot. All I'm going to say is I cannot legally talk about them. If that gives you any idea as to what they are.
They're very exciting. From
Exciting.
They're very great things, but I can't talk about them at the moment. So I'm just going to leave it at that.
Hell yeah.
And that's sort of how I got started casting, and why I'm at the point that I'm at now.
Yeah. Santos, what about you?
So, I've only actually been casting for about 4 months now. Like, I've done a couple, like, 10-mans and a couple Discords here and there off my own channel, but I really only started getting into casting when actually Swindle vouched for me to get on the Space Productions team and do the DreamHack Anaheim broadcast, which was a crazy experience, first of all. Like, I had no idea I was going to do it. Like, I remember Swindle talking to me at like a club fair or something like that, and he was like, "Hey, do you want to do a DreamHack Anaheim thing? And we're all going to share a house, and we're all going to do that sort of thing, and we're all going to travel to Anaheim." And I was like, "Okay." I've done zero casting experience. Like, I've had zero casting experience prior to that, other than like the things that I've ran myself. So, like, this was the scariest experience of my life, going to DreamHack Anaheim and like doing that cast. And
I'm pretty sure I'd never met you like in real life either. It was like
I had never like when we met up at the house that first night. Like, no idea who you were. That was the first time I heard your voice.
it was literally like Swindle was like, I can vouch for this guy. And I was like, okay, cool, bring him out. I was like, let's go for it. I'm like, we just need people at this point. And I was like, I can't fly people from across the country, and this is like a for fun thing that we're gonna do at Anaheim. And Swindle was like, I'm gonna take him in my little doom buggy, and we're gonna fly, or we're gonna drive all the way to California. And I'm just like, oh my god.
His little dune buggy, yeah.
And I saw you at first, and I was like, how did you both fit in that car? And I was just blown away at that.
Oh man, yeah, that car was it was certainly a ride. That was certainly a 7-hour trip to be remembered.
Hey, it's better than
driving.
We had a big old like SUV, but it was still we had 3 people in that SUV, and then all of our production equipment, which fit like all the back seats. So whoever was stuck in the back seat just had like a little tiny slit just to sit their ass down, and that was it. And like everyone's all, like,
lucky for you guys, Elijah likes to be uncomfortable.
Yeah, he does. Like a microphone would like all of a sudden just fall and knock the person who was like napping in the back of the seat. I'm just like, oh, okay. That was
Elijah,
wild.
you good? I like it here. I like it in the backseat being super uncomfortable. Then, yeah. So after DreamHack, I've mainly been doing stuff with you guys. Obviously, you've seen me on the cast a bunch of times, and just trying to develop into like a better caster. Just listening to myself. One of the biggest things that keeps me motivated to keep casting, I see that little thing on the bottom. So one of the biggest things that keeps me motivated to keep on going with this is Veli actually mentioned, or he messaged me on Twitter right after DreamHack Anaheim, and he was just giving me feedback and telling me that, hey, I have a future in this. So that really got me going, kept me pursuing this sort of thing, and yeah, now I yell at a video game for better or for worse. I love it though. I love working with you guys and casting so much.
I'm curious too, from just kind of bouncing off of that. You talked about Veli there, and I'm curious if you have any, Jessica as well, of just like any inspirational figures that you kind of look up to, both in terms of like, this is the kind of person that I want to be, as well as this is the kind of shoutcaster that I want to be, this is the experience that I want. What are those kind of things that you're thinking about there?
Well, for me, I actually have a lot that goes into it for me, because I've had interactions with tons of people in the pro scene. I talk with Veli pretty regularly. I talk with Stokes pretty regularly as well. I talk with a lot of guys that cast CL as well. I became good friends with Caliber Jacob recently, actually mod for his Twitch chat, but
nice.
But he and I became pretty good friends recently, and I mean, having someone that's at that level of the scene, it allowed me to sort of I was able to balance some of my cast off of him. He was able to give me pretty consistent feedback as well, and seeing stuff that he's done has sort of inspired me to sort of branch out in the things that I do and keep with it. But I think for the most part, I want to be. The thing that motivates me the most is not necessarily a single person. I want to be known as my own sort of caster. I want to be known for. I want to be known for me being myself, rather, because I've one of the things that I got from Veli and Stokes, and I had a brief interaction with Intero at one point. The thing that I got consistently from all of them was just be yourself and don't try to bullshit your way through something. And I've really taken that to heart with them, is to just try and find my own style and sort of keep with that. So I think really my interactions with a variety of people in the scene have really motivated me to keep going and to really make this my own career.
Amen. I think that's a big thing there.
Yeah.
Be yourself, but just don't be an asshole. That's
Yeah,
that's
pretty
always
much.
my TLDR
Yeah.
for whenever people are like, "What should I do in esports?" Just be yourself, just don't be an asshole.
Yeah. Yeah.
Don't be a jerk. You'll make it through somehow.
Yeah.
For me, same thing. Veli definitely reaching out to me. Looked up to him a lot, but I actually derive a lot of my casting thing from real sports. Well, not necessarily real sports, but traditional sports, if that makes sense. So, I watch the NBA a lot, and Mike Green, whenever he calls bang, after a big jumper, that's something that I love to hear. It brings a lot of hype to not only the broadcast, but just a lot of energy to the broadcast itself, if that makes sense. A lot of energy to your fellow caster. So I try to play off the other caster as much as possible. If they're bringing some energy, I like to bring energy as well. But in the esports realm, Veli for sure, Stokes, I've had a couple interactions with him before. And yeah, like Jessica said, developing your own style as a caster is definitely something that I'm looking forward to doing as I get on a couple more casts. I really want to find myself as sort of my own style, if that makes sense. A really funny inside joke that I have in a bunch of my Discord chats, and I disagree with it entirely, but that's something that a bunch of people say to me, is that I sound like Intero, which no, I do not. Not in the slightest. So, but yeah, if I had to compare my casting style, I guess now it would be a mix of Veli and Intero. I love the looseness of Veli's cast, and just he's willing to say anything about a team. He's famous for the trash can that he likes to bring out on the desk, and Intero, his way with language is just insane. Same with Flynn, if you guys remember who he is.
What kind of traditional sports do you watch the most that you take inspiration from?
Definitely the NBA for the most part. No, I don't like the casting for the NFL as much, if I'm going to be completely honest here. But so a lot of what I take is from, I would say, soccer or football and the NBA.
Yeah,
Soccer's got a lot of
I would think
energy.
it's super interesting in terms of how traditional sports is. They're not called casters, commentators. And it's interesting to see how it changes so much over the years and how they've evolved. And I wonder if esports is going to kind of get to the same point. And just the difference between basketball versus versus football is insane. They don't really comment a lot of times there's play-by-play casters on esports broadcast, but in basketball or football, that doesn't really exist. It's more they're just kind of there to give insight on what they think the strategies are talking about. They're not saying occasionally they will say number 9 passes the ball to number 12, and it's they will say that, but it's usually it's in the stadium. But if you're actually watching it on ESPN, it's very, very different experience than actually being there. And that was something that hugely surprised me at my first basketball game, which was 3 or 4 years ago that I saw my first basketball game. Insane.
What?
Yeah, I was not traditional sports at all.
That's crazy. I mean, if you listen to them on the radio, it's a lot more play-by-play, and that's where you'll probably hear more similarities between esports and sports. But if you watch it on TV, it's pretty different unless you're watching specific stuff.
Yeah, I was thinking about that too actually the other day. Esports, it works really, really well for radio broadcasts. Because every single play is talked about. Every single part of it is. And it's if you understand the game at its core level, you can understand what is happening in the game if you just listen. You don't even need to watch the broadcast. And that's something that I've really been wanting to explore with the Utah esports stuff. But that's a side tangent here.
I find it
feel
really cool
Siege,
too.
though. Go ahead.
I find it really cool that.
I feel
oh gosh, we're cutting it. You go.
Santos, go.
So I feel Siege, though, lends its way to sort of having that analytical mindset, because you have this time in between rounds to really draw on what happened the last round and being able to talk about what is happening in the game. I feel Siege really lends itself to that, as far as talking about strategies versus doing the play-by-play thing, because a lot of play-by-play in Siege lends itself to maybe the last minute of a round, and then maybe that 1 or 2 spawn peek or early frag. A lot of similarities can be drawn from traditional sports to Siege specific day?
I feel like it's probably when you're talking about the difference between how you see more of the commentators, I think it's probably very comparable to what you see with color casting currently when it comes to Siege. It's a lot of that. It's a lot of that analytical mindset. You don't really see a ton of. You don't really see a ton of the play-by-play. It's there, it's necessary, but you see more of the analytical side being pushed to the forefront, and that's actually more the way my casts go. Is I can do play-by-play when necessary, because I mean it's really only necessary in the last maybe 20 to 30 seconds of a round, typically, with kind of the way the meta's been shifting recently. That's a whole other can of worms, but you really only see it in that last little bit of the round. So for the rest of the round, you got to find something else to talk about, and that's where the color casting comes in. That's where the analytical part of it comes in, and there are parallels that can be drawn with traditional sports. I mean, when it comes down basketball, you may see more of that play-by-play and less of the analytical. But talking more towards American football, you see there's a lot of downtime between plays. That's where you hear more of that analytical side of things come in, as compared to the play-by-play really only happens for maybe 20, 30 seconds at a time, and then they break back into that analytical side of things.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it's super interesting to you look at like the different traditional sports, and you hit the nail on the head. American football has a lot more delay, basketball doesn't. I'm curious on what y'all's thoughts are. I know most of you guys here cast specifically Rainbow Six, but I'm sure you guys have watched like other titles in esports that have been cast and played, and I know I'm an avid League of Legends fan. So what do you guys think, in your opinion, makes for a good esports to cast, or a good esport title? Oh, let me rephrase the question. What makes an esports title good to cast? And like what are the key features that you're looking for in that?
I think it is something that is... I think it comes down to a game that is very open-ended in how it's played. I think that is probably the biggest thing about it. It's not about, oh, it's got certain features, it's got whatever. It just how it can be very open-ended when it comes down. Let's take for example CS:GO. CS:GO at its core is a very, very simple game. You buy a weapon, you go and you have to go. It's search and destroy, and you can change around your weapons a little bit, but there's not a ton of variety in the game's features itself. But the way you play it and the way that the game plays out across 16 to 30 rounds, that variety, that ability to strategize and to mold the game your way is what makes it a good game to cast and a good game to really analyze and makes it what makes a good esport in general. I mean, that's why a lot of people are talking about how Valorant is going to be really good. It has that same open-endedness that CS:GO had, as well as adding some elements from Overwatch with the abilities that add a little bit more openness, a little bit more ways to change up how the game is played. Similarly with League of Legends as well, you're talking about you're a fan of that as well. It comes down to there are so many different champions, there's so many different items and builds that you can make with that, and there's different strategies of, okay, which lane are we going to push first, which towers do we need to focus on first, how is our jungler going to play into it. It's just different things like that. The open-endedness of a game is what really, I think, makes or breaks it in the esports scene.
Interesting. Yureen, do you have any thoughts?
Oh, I don't cast, but I think generally, if a game has a lot of ways to play it, it's more interesting to watch and probably more fun to cast. So if something's super simple, obviously it'll be fun to watch if you just want something to watch. Like, I think Rocket League, while I think it has a lot of casting opportunities and a lot of ways to play it, I think it's very simple and easy to watch. Whereas if you take like League of Legends, the casters have to be more experienced to be able to explain the game to a new viewer.
I also think Rocket League is way too fast-paced. Something here as well, and I think it goes with what you were saying with like the open-endedness of it, is the tempo of the game. The tempo is very, very important. But go ahead, Santos. Do you have any thoughts?
So I like Call of Duty Call of Duty was my first esport, and But for a bunch of reasons that you guys mentioned, COD at its surface level is, hey, point and shoot at somebody. But I feel that there's a little bit of depth behind that. And the COD casters are really good at sort of explaining that sort of depth to the play. Like, if you think about COD at its core, it's a lot of, hey, just run around the map and go shoot people, especially in pub lobbies. But I think the thing that makes COD a relatively good esport, I know that it's a little bit on the sort of downswing, but the thing that makes COD very unique is the fact that there are a bunch of different ways to like manipulate a map. Obviously not as much as Siege because of all the destruction and vertical gameplay, but there are new things to find on COD maps, even though it's still very easy to learn on a surface level, if that makes sense. So what makes an esports title good to cast, I still think that there needs to be that surface level of, hey, anybody can watch this and anybody can pick up from it and anyone can take these tips that the casters are giving you, but there's still a lot of depth to it.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Well, I mean, you're telling me COD isn't a point-and-click adventure game?
just click heads. Just click heads.
It's easy.
Oh man. I mean, when it comes down to it at its core, I mean, Siege is the same thing. I mean, Siege is when you boil it down to its most basic thing, Siege is no different than CS:GO. It's a search and destroy game at its core in the esports scene. But it's that. The depth that you were talking about is sort of that open-endedness that I was mentioning as well. CS:GO brings that without having a ton of depth to their game, I think just by making it so simple and open-ended has put it more on the teams to add that depth for themselves. But when it comes to Siege, that depth is already there for you in the form of 50 different operators, 50 different gadgets, and different maps. There's destruction that is all over the place. I mean, there's so much depth and complexity to Siege that it doesn't leave as much of a burden. I don't want to say burden, as much responsibility on the teams and the players themselves to really create that depth in the game.
So I actually have an opposite point of view on this. I think Rainbow Six is a horrible esport. I think it's absolutely atrocious. In terms of a spectating experience, it needs to be improved in a spectating experience.
Yeah.
I can agree with that. I can agree that, especially currently. I mean, I was discussing this with Red Cube. We had him here we had him cast for the playoffs. I was discussing this with Red Cube earlier. Is sort of talking about how there's a newcomer. Sort of talking about Dota 2. Dota is one of the older esports out there.
A classic.
They have a newcomer stream.
Hold on one second. Fun fact, Dota 2 has actually the best demographic split out of any MOBA title. It's very interesting.
Really?
Yeah, it's almost exactly 50-50 within like male female.
But part of the international is they've had in the past a newcomer stream that sort of that they take it down and they break it down to the most base level of the game and talk about, okay, this thing they just did, this is what that is. And this is what that means. This is what we're talking about when we talk about this thing. In Siege, it's very difficult to do that. It's very difficult to say. You said they're talking about something that's like, oh, this person's bandit tricking this. You don't have the time to stop and explain what to someone who's never seen it before. What the hell is a bandit trick? I mean, just someone as a casual viewer of the game, it's going to be very difficult for them to understand that. Because it just with how I think Siege's complexity is one of its pros and as well as one of its cons when it comes to just the casual viewing and the esports side of things. It's a pro in that it allows for a lot of variety in how you see the game played. It's a con because it makes it very, very hard for the casual viewer to just pick it up.
That's what Siege suffers from, or not Siege, right? League of Legends and Dota suffers from just as well.
Yeah.
It's a very wide game. I wouldn't say it's deep. It's just there's a lot of different characters, and in this case there's a lot of different operators. But at least in Rainbow Six, each operator only really has you really just got to know the gadget. Like the guns and stuff can come secondary. But in League of Legends, you got to know all 4 abilities for all there's 175 champions now. That's insane.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, that's why I just thinking to myself, was like, I could never cast League. I could never ever cast League of Legends because of just how much, just the sheer amount of knowledge that you have to know to go into a game and be like, okay, they chose this champion. This is what they can do. And this is how they're useful. It's like I could not bring that in. I have enough trouble with just the 50 operators on two sides with Siege on its own, and I've gotten lucky is I've been playing this since Velvet Shell, so I've been around for probably about half of the operators that have come out. So I've been sort of gradually introduced to them, whereas if I tried to go over to League right now, I'd have to learn 125 just out of the gate, and that would be nearly impossible for me. So I can only imagine how a casual viewer and someone who hasn't played the game, how that can be incredibly intimidating, and as well for Siege. I mean, even I got lucky, again, since I've been here for a long time, but someone who's new to the scene, it's going to be incredibly difficult for them to learn just how much there is in the game. So I think, I don't know, I'd be interested to see if maybe at some point Siege invests in maybe a newcomer scene, or if we see maybe a content. I think something that I think would fill a really good niche for Siege is if a content creator did something that basically went through and had just a very sort of base level sort of introduction to a bunch of the different things that you see in esports, like bandit tricking, talking about like the SSG strat on Clubhouse and why it's a thing. Because I mean, I'll talk about it always like, oh, it's the SSG strat, but like me personally, I don't know why that strat is good. Why do teams run it? Why is that such a powerful thing? And I mean, even explaining it and someone who's just coming in and looking is just, oh, it's the SSG strat. Who's SSG, and why is this strat named after them?
Yeah.
So I feel like it would be. It kind of sucks that it's fallen to the community to sort of explain that, but I think it's a very small niche. But I think it would be really nice to have something that just sort of goes through a base level of some of just very base level of a lot of different things that go into esports. So if someone watches all this and then they go and watch a Pro League broadcast, they can understand everything that's going on.
Yeah, I mean, like that kind of stuff, it should fall in the community in my mind. Like you look at like Heroes of the Storm, like there was places like they did like character spotlights, like that was always useful. And I'm pretty sure Siege did that like during way back when in like Operation Health, and they're like, this is like a basic character, and you're like, okay, cool, yay, here's the backstory, yay, fun. But it's like it doesn't really go into much depth. Where if you look at like League of Legends more recently, they kind of go into like when Set came out, they released like they showcase like each one of the abilities, and then they don't just talk about the abilities, they talk about like this is where it's going to fit into the meta. This is where we think these abilities are going to be useful. This is what a team fight looks like with this character. This is what your lane looks like with this character. We advise you to go here. And so it's not just like 3-minute like leaning on the background. It's talking about the full gameplay. But I definitely think the biggest thing that Rainbow Six lacks as an overall like community and ecosystem is community content creators. There is just not enough. Like I literally like search on YouTube for like anything like talking about like strats just to educate myself on stuff, and it's like unless I go like watch King George or something, who he doesn't really talk about strats much, but it's just like it's like all like, here's my highlight clips for Rainbow Six. Oh, I'm so cool. Yeah, and that's it.
It's that, or you get a YouTuber like Bikini or Cobb or
like I would pay for
Tuxbert
content to sit there
Marley.
and watch Lycan talk to me about his strats. Like even if they're out of date strats, like I would pay to watch that. Like that would be incredible.
Yeah, and that's another thing as well. That is part of why we don't see a lot of that content is the to keep up to date with strats like that. There are so many people that do not want that to happen because they want their strats to stay secret. They do not want their strats to be revealed. It's why for this most recent CL quals and even last CL quals, people were fighting to not be casted during like the early stages because they did not want any footage of them available for other teams to see. They did not want their strats to be shown at all.
Yeah.
And while that's understandable to a point, it also comes down to, well, at that point, there's just it just really hurts the community as a whole at that point, rather than it helps the teams, but it hurts the community as a whole because it makes it a lot more difficult to really
It just makes it so anyone can get into the scene. It's hard.
Yeah.
You want to make the game as accessible as possible, right? And you are literally saying to maybe like a beginner player, like, hey, you're not going to be able to learn how to play the game at its fundamental core, because when you're talking about CL and PL, this is how the game was meant to be played. If in my personal opinion, you are watching the highest level of Siege, and you are watching the game as it is meant to be played. Yes, there are some things that are exploited, fine, but you are literally watching like the highest level of gameplay, and this is fundamental gameplay, like right here. Like, you are supposed to learn from this and try to play as much like that as possible. Excuse me. Obviously, you're not going to have like as nasty of a shot. A lot of the people that I play with can attest to that. My reaction time is horrible, but but like, the fundamentals of that, like, you need to hold this to be able to hold this site successfully. Like, I feel like a lot of that is missing in our community, and yeah, that's something that we need to work on. And like, I've seen a bunch of pro players do VOD reviews, and they teach like strats that are like fundamental, and why this thing, like, I was watching Flynn do a stream on why the reading and fireplace room strat works, and like, he was talking about having to like destroy all these walls, which, one, there's lots of stuff to learn in Siege already, so like, trying to explain that to a newcomer is very hard, but also like, that's just something that we need more.
There's
like,
lots of maps,
someone has to bite the bullet,
lots of operators, lots of everything, and it's just like, the hardest part for me too is, it's like, at least with League of Legends, I keep referring to League of Legends just because I'm most comfortable with it. You have one map, and it's like, you learn the map, then you learn the characters, then you learn the lane, and it's like, okay, cool, done. But like with Rainbow Six, there's really not like that progressive flow, because one, you can't pick which map you want to go on, so like, I can't just learn how to go in She's Villa unless I'm doing like 10 mans.
Yeah.
And it's like, it makes it difficult for me as a newcomer to come into the game and like learn what every site is. Like, literally yesterday I was like, I'm at main stairs, and Swindle's like, no, that's red stairs, Sam. And I'm like, there's 3 stairs.
Yeah.
Like, no sense.
Yep. I know.
It hurts us on the cast too. There are a million different callouts that we need to learn.
Yeah, a million different callouts,
no.
and the maps look so similar, and the verticality of it, I think, is what really kills it in my mind for newcomers and for the spectating. But that's what really makes it unique, and that's the part that I have really, really big trouble with.
Yeah, so I think, coming from a casting standpoint, good God, there are so many callouts you need to learn, and I'm lucky that the competitive pool is only 7 maps, and it is not the full breadth of maps that Siege has to offer. Because if it was, I wouldn't be able to handle it. I mean, I'm having trouble even on my own trying to learn the theme park callouts, because that's going to be in competitive next season. So I mean, I've got to learn the theme park callouts. I mean, I've been going into custom games, I've been looking at that. I've been talking to other casters as well, saying, okay, this spot right here, what do you refer to that as? And if it lines up with mine, okay, great. If it doesn't line up with mine, I ask, okay, why do you call it this? Or what is your source for calling it this? And I sort of build that, and I try and learn. It's what I did getting into the game as well.
There's a website for that now, right? Isn't there?
Yeah, Kickstarter wanted to do like a universal call out list for each map, which I think that is something that, especially us as casters, but as like players in general, we definitely need something
especially
like that.
Like
standardizing every single call out is something that we need to do. And then, like, obviously, if you're on a team, you can short form some things, but there should be standard names for everything.
Yeah, I mean, there absolutely should. And people, I've seen people all the time, they'll be like, oh, just look at the compass, it gives you a call out there. I mean, those all the time. Those are often not the callouts that are used, because sometimes they just don't make sense, or they can be very ambiguous, and it can make it difficult for you to. It's like, okay, you said this place, where in this place? Because there are places that have one giant call out for that entire room, and in more competitive scenes, they'll break that down to each individual part. So it's about trying to find the standardized side of that. So yes. I'll be I'll be interested to see where content sort of goes in the future. I go back to my friend Caliber Jacob. He filled a niche that wasn't already filled, which I think was fantastic. So he got popular off of his he had a long form video known as Rainbow Six Maps in Real Life, sort of talking about where the inspiration for the current pool of maps in Rainbow Six came from, and had just like a list. It's like these are based off of real places, these are based off of real situations, and these are based off of just absolutely nothing, and they're just something that the devs came up with. But recently he has a series known as Sixport, which condenses and puts in very simple terms what's going on in the Pro League and some in the Challenger League, of what's going on just in the scene in general, and condenses it, makes it very simple and easy to understand, puts them in very light-hearted formats, and makes them generally very easy to digest for just the casual viewer to get sort of the gist of what's going on, so they can understand going into an event or going into a season what's going on, or if something happened with this team, why did it happen with this team, and what's going on with them. Just those sort of the Sixport side of things I really enjoy as well. It makes the esports news as a whole a lot easier to understand, rather than just having to read through an entire Siege GG article that may take 10 years to get to the point to understand what's going on.
Yeah. We've got a pretty far off topic, but this is a good conversation. I enjoy
We
having
really
this
strayed.
It's
conversation.
great.
But I do want to bring it back a little bit. When you come to casting, there's a common principle in like game design, and we'll get back to the questions, I swear, here in a second, Yuri. But there's a common principle in game design that you're basically catering to 4 different types of players. They're done after each one of the suite of cards. So it's like a heart is someone who plays socially, and just wants to see their friends. So like in streaming, that means that they just want to watch their friends play. A spade is someone who like wants to come in there and be the best and beat everyone. Or that's a diamond. Sorry, a diamond wants to come in there and be the best, beat everyone. They're the super tryhards that are usually competing. And then there's some other ones along the way, but for those sake of those 2 right there, how do you have any like stereotypical people that you build out for who you are trying to cast to in your mind? Like any kind of like target demographic, target people, like who are you casting to, I guess is a good question.
So for the for the tryhard side of it, I have one person that I think of, and you will probably not know who he is at all, because I don't think you guys are familiar with North American Tier 3 at all. Swindle might know them, because I know he's kind of in that scene a little bit, and it is Fate. He plays for the team. He plays for Ancients Gaming, and he's like diamond, almost champion every single season. He plays to be some of the best in the game. He's the person I build out, because he's just all about grinding the game out to the nub, basically. And he knows a lot about what goes on in comp, because he's a tier 3 player. He's been in that scene for a long time. So I try to build my cast like you're saying, try to pull in between of the people who's just socially watching, and the people who are the tryhard. I don't try to get very complex in what I'm talking about, but I still talk in terms that people who play the game at least a little bit will understand. That way, even the tryhards will understand what's going on, and the people who socially play will still be able to at least understand it a little bit.
I want to chime in real quick. Swindle says Fate has taken his elo a couple of times.
Yeah. Fate is a really solid player, and they unfortunately got knocked out of CL quals. I was really hoping to see him in, but. Another person I kind of Japanadian is his name. He got so close to actually making Canadian PL. He got beat by Flynn and Not Loading's team in the last round, and unfortunately he did not make it. But it looks like they actually did make Challenger League. So. but Fate is probably the person who I sort of envision in my mind as like he is the utmost of sweat and try hard that I need to sort of build to.
Do you have any other like character, or not character, but person in mind for any kind of different other cast? Like you have the tryhards in mind, but what else?
Yeah. So for the more casual person, I try to think of more recently. This has come to mind because I've become a little bit better friends with him recently. The streamer Heavenly Father. I've talked to him before, and like I'll mention something about competitive, and he'll be like, I'm gonna be real with you. I have no idea what's going on in the comp scene, and I have no intention of knowing what's going on in there. He's the person that I sort of put to my mind is they're not there to really understand what's going on. They're just there to see people get their heads blown off, and that's where I sort of build out. He's the kind of person that I build out sort of my theatrics when it comes to it. He's the person that I sort of build my energy around. I sort of build the stories around sort of, that's the main reason why I try to build the stories in is to sort of cater to the more casual player, to have someone something that they can follow very easily without really knowing what's going on in the game, sort of building it up. I kind of tried to do it during the playoffs as well. I kind of had this narrative when it came to Utah and Akron. I would talk about Utah made this dark horse run, and they were the underdogs coming through as they finished top of their group, and they're coming in. They're facing the Goliath that is Akron, who are coming in to defend their championship title. I mean, they're coming in to say we're still the best, and we will continue to be the best. But Utah is coming in. They have worked so hard to get to that point, and they're going to try their hardest to come back. And it happened, and they ended up losing. Akron was going to go through and defend their title, and then they faced them again. And they came this close to actually coming through it, and building up that storyline and finding that sort of narrative that I can build into a cast is what I sort of use to cater to the people that are just there. I'm just kind of there to see what's going on. I find something that I can sort of build towards them and can make them interested in and have them follow it without them really having to understand the game, like someone who's really that's in the comp scene and is really invested in the game.
Yeah. What about you, Syndist?
So I try to make my casting digestible for a newcomer, but still analytical enough that someone in like the tier 2, tier 3, maybe even tier 1 scene wouldn't call me a dumbass, if that makes sense. Especially for like mid-round, talking analytically, I try to make it so that someone at a very basic level of the game will understand what's going on, and obviously that's hard in Siege, but it's still something that you can take as a semi-competitive or even a ranked player for Siege can take into mind and say, oh, he's talking about something pretty productive here. And then when we're closing in on like the end of a round, like that last minute sort of push, I kind of try to throw away the analytics, if that makes sense. Like I talk about why a different push is going to work, and I've talked, like you've heard me talk about like isolating your gunfights a lot. Like that is a key skill when you are trying to win 1vx's, and like I will talk about that, but I will just try to paint a picture of what's going on the screen, because like gameplay on its own, like it's whatever. Like casting to me is more so trying to paint a picture with better color. It's like I have two monitors in front of me, and like my 60 hertz is terrible with its colors, and then casting is sort of like dragging it onto my better monitor and saying, okay, let me paint a little more color to this picture, and saying, okay, this is like, I'm trying to like give the story of a round, if that makes sense. Yeah. And then who do I cast to when I'm on a broadcast? So like I want to be able to talk about this to someone like Sam, who doesn't have a lot of experience with the game, like, like not to take shots at you, right? But like,
it's fine. I just produce it.
But like someone who like sees Siege as like point and click someone's head, and then also have it be relevant to Jessica, who is like, okay, this is why this strategy works, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good shit. Okay, let's shift gears a little bit. Let's talk more about, well, actually, first things first. In 10 words or less, you can take time to think about this, and we'll start with Santos first. 10 words or less, what would you give to someone who's an aspiring caster? What advice would you give to them?
Put yourself out there as much as possible.
Don't one word.
Jessica, what about you?
It's not an easy question to answer, that's for sure.
That's true.
Especially in less than 10 words.
Start small, know your worth, don't watch your own casts.
Perfect.
Oh.
Nailed it. Nailed
I
it.
feel like we're making a haiku.
Yeah,
Nice.
Probably I want to elaborate on don't watch your own cast, because that's actually something I picked up recently from Veli.
Yeah.
Is I am my own worst critic, and honestly, when it comes to casting, I mean, I wasn't before this, but when it came to casting, I am just so critical of my own stuff. Do not watch your own cast. Find another caster, and who, I mean, honestly, I mean, if you're an aspiring caster, watch this. Send me your VODs. I will sit through and I will watch it and I will get you feedback. But if for some reason I'm not available, or you have another friend who's a caster, send it to them. Ask them for feedback. Even if you think, well, maybe they may not want to listen to it. I mean, send it to them. Most casters will be perfectly fine to give you feedback on your casting, and especially up at the pro level as well. I mean, Stokes, Veli. I mean, those two are probably, in North America at least, those two guys are probably the most accessible and the most willing to give you feedback on your casting. Veli in particular has been such a great help and has given me a lot of good feedback. Even without watching a lot of my casts, he just knows the style that I go for, and he's given me feedback that has really helped me in casting. And so I really think trying to get some advice from the pros, or just having someone else put eyes on what you've done is really helpful.
To play off of that, when you are asking for that feedback, don't take it to heart. Don't take it as a personal dig. If you're gonna make it anywhere, whether it be in casting or in production or in any kind of show business, if you're asking for feedback and you're taking it as a personal dig on you, you're not cut out for this.
Agreed.
Like,
Yeah.
you need to be able to take feedback at its surface level and just treat it as a way to get better.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
You need to be able to sit there, take the brunt of it, understand that it's someone who's usually going to be pretty critical on you, and then hopefully improve from it.
You're literally asking for
Yeah.
it. Like,
Yeah.
you're asking.
You're
for
literally
criticism.
saying roast.
And just as a fair warning, if you go to Stokes or Veli, they are two of the most blunt people I have ever met in my life. Be prepared to be flamed off your ass.
they're gonna hurt your feelings.
They're gonna hurt you.
Yes.
They are being as genuine, and they are not meaning it personally at all. They will burn you absolutely and wholly.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. With what Jessica said, make sure you get a mentor. I think that would be one of my best words of advice, and this is more coming from a graphic design perspective. But if you have a mentor, it makes everything 100 times easier. And it doesn't mean that they have to literally sit down with you all the time and give you mentorship. It's just, it can be as simple as what Jessica's talking about. Is like, hey, can you look over my VOD? I would love to get some feedback from you. And like always, don't be afraid to reach out to them. They'll talk to you 95% of the time. It might take a little while, but they'll talk to you.
Yeah.
You can really only get to a certain point doing things on your own. At some point, you're going to need somebody to at least look over it for you.
Or at least ask
Because
questions.
it's like, it's like watching your own VOD for a Rainbow Six game. Obviously, it's helpful for a little bit in certain things, but in the end, it doesn't help at certain points, and you need somebody else to look at it and tell you what's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. All right, let's shift gears, and this will be the final little segment that we got before we go ahead and sign off. We're just about hitting the hour mark, so we got about a half hour left, and then we're gonna sign off for a bit. But for this part, I want to talk about the CRSL Grand Finals. You guys cast the losers part for the CRSL broadcast, along with a crazy lineup of casters like Red Cube, and now they all just escaped from my head as soon as I started this.
Red Cube, Jazzman, Jesse Chick, and Hunter Cash.
There we go. And you guys did an incredible job, and we're right on par with a lot of them. And I would love to hear kind of what was your favorite memory from casting for Season 2 of CRSL? Doesn't have to be the Grand Finals. 2, did the grand finals meet all of your expectations? That could be from a storyline perspective, from a tech perspective, all that kind of stuff. And I'll be chiming in here as well. And 3, did you expect the outcome?
So I'll sort of start off first. So my favorite memory was probably I've talked about it. I talked about it earlier. Was honestly it was the 2 Utah Akron matches were probably my favorite moments. What was seeing just how hard Utah was pushing after. I mean, no, I got to be honest. No one expected them to get that far. I mean, they kind of came out of nowhere and won their qualifier, and then topped their group, and then made it through. And they played the former champions twice and held it very, very close both times. And that was really, really wonderful to see, and just to be able to cast Siege that was played that well really made it. It was probably my favorite moment.
Cool.
I think my favorite moment of the season, I actually have 2 of them. So this was technically preseason, but doing DreamHack NM with you guys again, like a lot of memories made, not only on the cast, but off the cast as well. But when you guys made the announcement for us to be on the Final Four, I remember thinking to myself, like, I saw the casting lineup, it took my breath away. Like,
Special
I'm not
props
sure if
to
Jessica
Swindle for
felt
that, by the way. Sorry, I had nothing to do with like creating the lineup for that. I basically said, Swindle, go for it. Create a sick lineup, and it was like, and he came back with all of them, and I was like, hell yeah! So I was super excited.
When I saw that casting, like, sort of announcement, to see my name amongst those names was something insane to me, because like I literally started casting 4 months ago. So like, seeing my name amongst those casters, and like you said, you know, hopefully meeting their level of expectation, like, that was insane to me. That was very memorable for me.
Yeah, so sort of bouncing off of that and talking about probably my experience casting the Final Four. I got to cast it with Santos. It was really, really wonderful, and I very much enjoyed it, and it'll go down as one of my favorite casts. I mean, I use that cast and one of the casts I use with Kino from the playoffs, and another cast I did with Crow in CRSL on my casting reel. Actually, most of my highlight reel is actually made up of CRSL clips, because it has probably been some of my best casting, and especially from the Final Four as well. I mean, the production behind the Final Four was massive. I mean, we got really, really good stat updates throughout the entire thing. It was a wonderful statistics teams behind the whole thing, and on top of that, you had just wonderful production as a whole. I mean, you had the little fun facts that were popping up here and there. You had the replays that we had. It was really, really nice as well. It was another thing we could talk about. That helped us as well to just kind of go back and think, it was just, okay, like what really happened that was fantastic in this round, and it really it allowed me to sort of help sort of build a little bit more of a storyline, talking about FIU coming back, showing is like, hey, we already beat Akron once, so we can beat them again. Let's show that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I really enjoy the Final Four. It's sort of the same thing as Santos. I really liked being able to see myself among casters that had done such wonderful things. I mean, Red Cube and Jazz as well. I mean, I've become decent friends with them just from other things that I've done with them. But seeing myself alongside them as well, and seeing just how creative casters they are, and Hunter and Jesse as well, both well-known Canadian nationals casters. I mean, Hunter was a CL coach during the final season 11, and Jesse was a caster. I mean, being able to be amongst that level of talent just in Siege in general was, I mean, it was really wonderful to be a part of that lineup in general.
Yeah, it was a really fun experience too. I know for my side on production, I always enjoy sitting in the same channel with the casters. One, just kind of spicing it up the gameplay and making it fun for them because I can talk to them, but they can't talk to me. So, so I get to troll in their ear every once in a while. That's wonderful.
Yep.
So
I remember that.
Just picking Red Cube's mind and Jesse and all of them was absolutely enjoyable. It's a crazy fun experience.
If I could talk about the production behind the finals, though, like that rivaled some of the Pro League broadcasts. That rivaled almost Six Invitational. Like there was so much quality behind that broadcast, and like shout outs to you guys for putting that on. But like everyone behind the scenes, like this is like I like that we're doing this episode because like everyone behind the scenes, like technically me and Jessica are front runners. We couldn't do it, like are on the front lines. We couldn't do it without you guys, and like that broadcast was insane. And like to be on front page of Twitch, like that was so memorable for me. That was so much fun.
That was an absolutely great experience. I'll never forget Swindle. Just like I could hear him in like the other voice channels, just like screaming, being like, "Don't we hit 1K?" And he's just like at the top of his lungs, just like freaking out.
That voice channel was crazy.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, no, the viewership we had as well. I mean, that is probably that is the most viewed cast I have ever been on. Even when I was casting Space Station, I got to cast Space Station versus what is now known as Vibe is Eternal. I got to cast that roster in the Six Invitational close qualifier, and my viewership numbers did not even hit anything like that. Casting a Pro League team and a Challenger League team as well, and then going and then casting a collegiate team, which I mean, people don't. I talk about collegiate to some people. They're like, "What? There's a collegiate scene?" And just being able to, I mean, just being able to be on something like that was just incredible. And like Sandra said, I mean, just big thanks to you guys for just being just. I mean, having that level of production is something that I have never had working with anyone before in any of the leagues I've worked with, and I've worked with a variety of tier 3 leagues. I've never had production or your stats on that level. I mean, you guys really just pushed it so much further than anyone else has really pushed it before. So I mean, hats off to you guys for everything you've done.
Yeah, and I just want to chime in on that too. A big thing that we tried to do for this one is, one, we wanted to, a big core philosophy of what we've done with like CRSL is to give that super exclusive Pro League feel to college. And so that was kind of the mindset of us going into this broadcast initially. And with COVID right around the corner, or when it was coming up, we had to think about how we wanted to pivot from originally doing it at potentially DreamHack again. And we had to think about, how do we want to do this completely online? How do we want to bring in the casters for this? How do we want to make this still feel like the players are playing on like a stage-like experience and they're being broadcast across the country and they feel like they are absolutely incredible. Like they feel like they are gods in this moment. They are paragons for the collegiate community. And it's like, how could we do that? And a lot of it boiled down to emulating a lot of Pro League, but also analyzing Pro League and seeing what they did well and then trying to go beyond. And what we found out is like a lot of what Pro League does is based off of the incredible work of like what CGG does. They do a lot of really good stuff with like the stats, the analytics, and they do a lot of really good like content around the side too. And it's just like, how can we bring that to college now? And how can we get that like kind of the stats and analytics behind all of this? And thank God we had all of the group stage and all the playoffs recorded, and the wonderful stats team of like Adanu, I think Yureen, you even helped out with it too.
Yeah, I had some stats.
All our beautiful spreadsheets that they've built out and all the head admins that did it. It was incredible. And they were just, I was a mere puppet in terms of like me directing all of it and just throwing in lower thirds every once in a while. They were just feeding me stats and analytics to throw a case on there. And I'll never forget the memes in chat where it was like, oh yes, 6.4% of the time Valkyrie is picked. And like one of the head admins goes, interesting. And I'm just like, it was like just such a weird like off the cuff thing. But it's a really cool symbiotic experience to basically work with you guys and then work with any kind of caster as well, to come in here and be like, okay, cool, what is, like, me as a director, I have to figure out like, what do you guys want in the future? And then I had to go and like talk to the head admins, and I'm like, hey, give me some stats based off of like these 3 things that are going to be coming up here. They just called for this last round. I know they want to see it. Let's bring it up on screen. And so it's a lot of like back and forth, a lot of communication, and it's something that if we were all in studio, that'd be incredibly easy. I would just shout to the person behind me and be like, yo, come give me this stat. And I would like literally even potentially get up there and like go on their screen and be like, I want this one. But when it's online, I have to be hopping between Discord channels. And it's crazy and it's chaotic, but it's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
It was really cool to do the stats behind the scenes because like we got a clean feed of the whole thing, so we'd have the stats before the stream would get them, obviously, and so we'd just get the stats, shove them in the sheet, and we did a lot. There were a lot of stats going into it each time. It was incredible to see the spreadsheet.
Yeah, you guys built the spreadsheet too, so you'd be able to update it live. I think that was the craziest part to me. Like, you weren't just waiting like after the round. Like, you were just like, okay, someone just got a kill, and then it was like, okay, cool.
Yeah.
And it just automatically calculated it all. And it was absolutely insane. So
I was surprised none of us got caught slacking. I figured we'd miss something, but we never. I don't know how we never managed to miss anything.
Hey, there was 4 of you working on it. If one of you slacked, the other 3 can pick up the slack.
That is very true.
Yeah, no.
Like a lot of what happened in that grand final broadcast, like it all came down to like how much all of us cared about it, if that makes sense. Like I kind of compare it to like home cooking versus fast food. Like you can just tell, like I know Swindle's in the chat and like this was his sort of brainchild, all the whole College Rainbow Six thing. Like you can just tell how much everyone cared about like wanting to put on the best show possible, and like we definitely achieved that. It was insane.
Yeah, and that's always been a mantra for us at Space Productions, which is now Mission Control TV. For us to put on the best fucking show. That's always been our mantra going into this.
Yeah.
And we want to always provide the best possible experience that we can. When we can. And the Summer League is something that's more casual, so we'll see. But big stuff in store. We're hoping some cool stuff's going to come out in the fall.
Yeah.
Cool.
Was the to go on?
No.
What was the outcome of the season expected for you all? Did you guys expect Akron to pull it out, or?
I honestly, I was torn. I felt like Akron, seeing their players and knowing, I mean, what they were capable of doing, I felt like they were at least going to make it to the Final Four. I thought they were going to. I thought at the very least they were going to top their side of the bracket. But I honestly had no idea whether or not they were going to win it. I felt like FIU definitely had a solid chance to usurp them, because FIU is another just absolute powerhouse of a team right alongside Akron. So I would say it was at least a little bit expected on my part, at least. I felt like there was still a pretty strong chance that Akron were going to be the 2-time champions.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a playoff that I expected the outcome. I just didn't expect the road, like them getting upset in one of the earlier rounds. Like,
Yeah.
there were a lot of curveballs that were thrown into that bracket, which is why our league is amazing. Like seeing UTSA in the Final Four, like that was really cool, and things like that. Like there were a lot of like little bumps in the road. Like we were like I was expecting Miami and Soup to make it to the Final Four, and obviously that didn't happen. So there were a lot of, I guess, upsets that happened, kind of like how, the NCAA tournament would happen.
Yeah.
There were a lot of teams that I expected to make it through that didn't. Like Sheridan was 7-0 in their group for CRSL.
Sheridan
and
didn't
they
even
lost
make it.
round 4, I think, or round 3. They got out quick.
They lost very early on. I mean, that was definitely unexpected for me as well. I was just, wow, they're just gone. And after I had cast them multiple times, and they were just incredibly dominant, and then they're gone. They don't even go.
Yeah.
They're just gone. That was just it.
Yeah, and something to add to that too,
Storyline.
like I was very happy with the way that the bracket turned out. Like none of these upsets felt like it was like, oh fuck the bracket kind of thing. It felt like it was a good, fair game, and it's like we had I feel like most of the teams felt like they had a good run, and it wasn't just like, oh, we got shafted because our seeding got fucked. Or it was only a best of one and we got screwed out of it. And it's like, I felt like it was a really solid format. And that's mostly me tooting me and Swindle's own horn. But who knows? Maybe we'll see King of the Hill come back in the fall. I'd love to have that format come to play.
That format would be awesome.
Same thing with the Utah boys run too. Like they made a pretty deep run. Like that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Cool. Well, we're just about at the end of all of this. So I want to ask you one final question here. what is it that you guys as casters want to see for the future of CRSL? You guys can roast me, roast Swindle, roast anyone you want. What do you want to see in the future of CRSL?
For me, I feel like this was less in your control than anything else. It was. I was really disappointed that the LAN didn't happen, because I was going to be one of the casters at that LAN.
You and me both.
I was really disappointed that DreamHack didn't happen. So I mean, I'll be excited to see where you guys take it in the future once all this clears up. What you guys can do with a LAN with the Final Four, and what you guys can do on the production side with that, because I think that's going to with how well you did on this last one with it just being online, I can only imagine how much that's going to elevate when it comes to it being on LAN and being in just a wonderful spot. So yeah, no, I'll definitely be very interested to see where that goes.
So you want to see more LANs and more in-person experiences?
Yeah, I think that's it. But another thing as well is I wish there were more casting opportunities as well. I understand that comes down to it gives a lot more flexibility to the teams, that not every game is going to be cast. There's not exactly a set time that each match has to be. It just has to happen within whatever time. And I know you guys had to be flexible with the COVID situation and teams having to move back home. But I think having some more casted games, and a thing that I've seen CEA, another collegiate league, do, which I think could have been interesting, is they had some games. I mean, all of the games for the season were recorded. They would have people cast over the recorded games.
Yep. I thought that was something that was really cool. I wish we did more of during the season. I agree.
Yeah, I think still allowing for that flexibility, but also having some of those recorded games be casted as well. I think that could also be nice for the next season as well.
Agreed. I would definitely love to see more community empowerment. That's kind of what that classification goes underneath, and that's something that we were definitely thinking of going into the season. But we got very overwhelmed with just trying to record all the games, logistics of all of that, and then just manage the league, and on top of COVID, it was crazy. But we want to see more like we wanted to do this season. We wanted to do what is the word I'm looking for? We wanted to do basically, flew out of my head all together. Score lines, where it's like the score lines for each week go out, and we make like a short press release, and then we pass it out to anyone that would be interested in it. Like we had Warlock, who's been doing a lot of like podcasts. Swindle's been on them a couple times, who's interested in covering it, and just creating these more opportunities for public data. I feel like a lot of times there's a lot of the stuff that we do is very like behind the scenes, and it's like, okay, the players only really get to experience. There's no one, like, if you're not a player in the current league, like you kind of just don't really get to see what's going on, and it's like breaking down those barriers is what we want to do. And I think that's kind of a point of like our podcast that we're doing here as well, and what we can do for fall. Hopefully we can do a lot more of that stuff. So super excited. Marvin, what about you?
So
it's weird calling you
future
Marvin,
CRSL,
by the way. I'm so used to calling you Sam.
Yeah, right.
This is bizarre.
Yeah, I'm not used to hearing my first name in the gaming space. But things that I want to see in the future of CRSL. Jessica mentioned the LAN. I would have loved to be there. Even if you didn't have me on casting, I would have loved to be there just because I support the league and everything that we do.
I'd love to have you sleeping on the floor again. Snores and all.
Snoring up a storm. But also community interaction, and I know we do our 10-mans every week, but a lot of community, like I would feel that the league would benefit from a lot of community interaction. Like this podcast is a very good step in that direction, like just us being in the face of the community, like getting, I guess, deeper insights into what we do as casters or what the players go through. That would definitely be something that I would like to see from CRSL moving forward.
Hell yeah.
Also, having me around, I you know.
Well, yeah. Yureen, do you have any final comments on what you as a caster would like to see?
No, I just want to see probably more community involvement. I think if we engage with our community more, it could grow the scene a lot more than we've already been growing it. So I think this is, as Santos said, it's a good step in the right direction. But hopefully we can take some more steps to really engage with the community more. more.
Hell yeah. Cool.
Like me not forgetting to do 10 mans.
Hey, you're gonna run 10 mans until you die.
You know what? Even though these teams aren't set for 10 mans, you are now doing stat recording. Good luck.
Good luck. No.
10 mans.
Have fun.
Send me the screenshots.
All right, guys. This has been absolutely great time. This was a fun time to come on and just chat. Thank you all for coming on. It's always a pleasure to have you, and I look forward to seeing you guys in future broadcasts. No. Gremlin Sam came out there for a second. I ate my ramen on the stream, and now I'm all hyper. Cool. It's been a wonderful time. Yureen, do you have any closing statements before I give the final thank you?
I don't think so.
Cool. Well, thank you so much for joining us for episode 2 of College Rainbow 6 podcast. It's been a crazy time in all of these. It's super hot outside and I'm sweating. I don't like this. But thank you all for joining us.
All right.
And we will see you next time. Our podcast, and I always forget to do socials. I always forget. You can follow us at College Rainbow 6. And then you can also follow along with us on our YouTube, which doesn't have a formal link, but you can find it on the Twitter. And we will be doing these podcasts ideally every Tuesday. We went silent last week for Black Lives Matter. We didn't want to interfere with Blackout Tuesday. But next Tuesday, at the same time, for 6 o'clock Mountain Time, 5 o'clock Pacific Time, and 8 o'clock Eastern Time, I got it right the first time, we will be doing our podcast every Tuesday. So, see you then, guys.
Yeah.
Thank you.